Caribou Planning Board open. First order of business is we want, at least I want, and I trust the members of the board want to wish Evan all the very best in his run next Monday. How many will this be for you?
6.
6. And how many top 100s have you had?
3 or 4.
3 or 4. That's pretty darn good.
Tell the audience what you're talking about.
Oh, the Boston Marathon. In case anybody didn't know.
Thank you.
You what? Look, we really wish you the best. I'll be looking for you on TV. I'll be watching. Okay, next item will be the minutes. Well, actually, the agenda. Anybody have anything you want to change on the agenda? Okay, then we will do the minutes. That's a good idea.
Make a motion that we accept March 14th minutes for the planning board.
Second it.
All in favor? Okay, carries. Minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing. A use permit for Mr. Duplessis, who wants to do an automotive repair business at 565 Van Buren Road. Before I open the hearing, I was pretty disturbed by some of the pictures that I saw. I'm not exactly sure how getting a permit to run an auto business is going to change that. Let's see. I'll declare the hearing open at...
I have pictures of what it was current as of today.
Step right up to the mic. Well, it's a public hearing.
I've never did this before.
I'm new at it too. The hearing is open, and if anyone in the audience wants to speak, now is the time. Approach the podium and identify yourself, please.
My name's Philip Duplessis. I live at 565 Van Buren Road. I've been a part of the community since I moved back here out of the service. I was in the Army, 1987. Invested into the community, worked 23 years at McCain's, ended up getting hurt. And what started out as a hobby got bigger and bigger. So it was time to do it legit. So that's why I've asked for a user permit. There are vehicles around, but some of the pictures depict I've cleaned up since then. Moved them around, got rid of most all the vehicles that are in my yard right now. I'll drive and move. A customer comes, I fix it, it goes. Another one comes. So, I mean, it's my house. My wife gets mad. But I have pictures of currently what it looks like. It's not destroyed. The vehicles, I've got 3 or 4 vehicles in the front, on the lawn, halfway through where the house is, and they're all lined up. They all drive and move. So
Are they registered?
one of them's not. But
I'm his wife, Jody Duplessis, and I do get mad because my ex-husband was a junk collector, but this isn't junk. This is things that he works on. And if it's not this that they're going to complain about, it's going to be something else that's going to bring us down here. They just look for complaints. This isn't our first one. And we're not going anywhere, so they can complain as much as they want. We're not going. And he's doing good with the business. He's bringing business all around town because he gets parts from local businesses.
I keep it in Caribou local.
I think it would be a good idea, and that's my thoughts on it.
I approached to give you an idea.
He's taking photos on his
Oh, okay, sure.
If you don't mind.
Share them with the board. Start with Mr. Graves.
See, that's the yard when you come in.
So I did include our past history, our past recent histories for you to look at. So there was 2 notices of violation that went out to Mr. Duplessis. Both times he came to my office and we spoke about him. He's been very good to work with, and I haven't seen any problems lately.
Oh, okay. That's what wasn't clear when I saw all that documentation.
Right. We've spoke quite a few times. And when I put my garage up, it was just going to be a hobby. And his brother-in-law next door gave me a hard time with a wire, a power wire. A year and a half it took before Maine Public, he would allow them to put a pole on his property and feed it. I had it all set up, all free for nothing.
It's just one thing.
It's one thing after another. If I blow snow into my trees, I get called on.
Well, I do too.
You know what I mean? I don't bother. I don't
They've
set
got
out to
nothing else
bother
to
them,
do.
and I keep to myself.
Right.
I keep to myself, and that's what I try to do. But I mean, cars don't sit there for months upon months. They might sit a few days if I'm waiting for a part, fix it, and I do quite a bit. I do for JoJo Sleeper, quite a few people in town.
What type of work do you do?
Auto mechanics.
Which includes what exactly?
Fixing the engines, transmissions, motors, windshields, weld,
Any body work, paint?
little, very little.
Okay.
Like if I change a fender, might touch up the fender a bit.
What about
Do
with
we have a
regards to
place?
fluids?
They all go in containers. I
And
have,
if there's a spill or anything like that,
I have Speedy Dry and I have,
do you have a drain in the garage?
right,
And where does it drain to?
it goes
Does
out.
it drain out just into the open?
North.
Right,
The daylight.
yeah.
Thank you.
The only reason I put that in is because of the salt when tires are unthawed in the wintertime.
Yep.
And I haven't had no spills or nothing. I'm very careful about that.
So the pictures that are shown here,
When I first moved in,
okay, I'm assuming none of those pictures are,
that's when I first, this is what I took as I left the house today.
yeah, but this isn't a tree line or?
That's a tree line at the back of my house.
So that picture's not,
This is in the front of the
so
house.
has this been cleaned
But
up?
what's in the back
Oh,
of the
yes,
house?
and I put a fence sideways, like this, to shield from him.
Okay.
I talked quite a few times to Ken about this, and this is what we approached and did, and I cleaned up. There was some parts there. All the parts are on a sled trailer. It's not disorganized. I mean, that's what I have for an income now. So.
I guess part of the history, Ken, that I'm concerned with is the first notice that was sent dated 9/25. He was asked to take corrective action by 10/14. And then he received a second notice on 3/21/19, still stating the same day of the violation that it was observed. And then there was an additional violation, and he was given to 4/1 to comply and take care of it.
Correct. That had to do with poultry, so
Right,
chicken pen.
but on that second notice, it also lists the same violation number 302 with regards to the motor vehicles. So if something was addressed 10/14, and then it gets addressed again on 3/21 and it's the same violation, I mean, is it,
It was a similar violation, but different vehicles. Like,
okay.
as Mr. Duplessis said, this is a hobby that has morphed into more.
Right, I understand that part of it. So is the date on the second notice of violation, on the date it was observed is 9/17 incorrect, or? Because the way it reads to me is he received his first violation, and then he got the second one, and then there was an additional one.
It should have read the same date as it was sent.
So on September 25, you sent him the notice, and then 6 months later, in March, you sent it to him again
Correct.
for the same
For the
issue
same issue?
dating back to the prior September.
Yep.
So there hadn't been any recourse with regards to that.
There was. As he indicated, as Phil indicated, he came in to my office, we spoke both times, he sent the violation.
So I guess,
And that's on me, that second one should have read the same date that I sent it, should have been the day it was observed.
It should be 3/21.
The last time we talked, not to interrupt, the last time we talked about a user permit. So I said I'd get ready and get everything in order, and then when we talked again, then it was Tom.
Right. And
I
that's
don't think,
We've
I
been
almost
talking.
think that, I think you addressed that a few months ago.
A few
right?
months ago.
I mean, a month or so ago. I mean, you had told us.
he
kind
made
of what-
mention of it, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, so I know that, yeah.
It's been coming to this, so
But part of my concern is the fact that is this stemming from for lack of a better term, somebody getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Similar to what we ran into with regards to the violations with Bill Belanger and the horses. As far as, it's been addressed, so this is my way of taking care of it, is I'm going to...
Well, I say it's a hobby that's grown into a business because when I talked to my building officials, they said it was a hobby. It started out as a hobby. So I took it from my building
I was
inspectors
working
that
at
that's
the
where it
cage at the
started.
time.
And I think you've had conversations, so all the information isn't in here, but it seems like he's doing the right thing. He's been given the time, and you've had consultations that guide him in the right direction. I think he's doing the right thing now that he said, it's more than a hobby. He's understood that.
Right.
So it's,
I'm wondering if anybody else has any questions for Mr. Duplessis, so that we can, I see there's another person in the audience that's wanting an opportunity to speak. Do you have anything else for Mr. Duplessis?
Just a comment. I don't see that obtaining a user permit for an auto repair business solves the problem in any way of the original complaint and an ongoing potential issue of having a lot of vehicles around on the yard. And so having a use permit for auto repair won't necessarily relieve you of your obligation to shield or fence those, providing visual buffers and that type of thing, which is covered in other parts of the ordinances for the city.
We've talked, and I planned on putting a fence down both sides.
Okay,
And there's a
so,
few cars that, yes, I can get rid of. That's no problem. I have no problem with that.
yeah,
But most of them, they come and go.
right.
I mean,
It's
that's why I moved out and bought the place in the country.
it's the visual. It's the fact that there, it doesn't matter which ones they are. It's the fact that there's always a bunch of cars there.
The visual is down back, sir. Way down back. At the back property line.
Is that an is or a was?
I thought the pictures you just showed us was in front.
That's in front. There's only 3 vehicles that I'm working on presently.
But they're stored out front.
Yeah, just, they won't be there long.
Yeah.
They're usually gone within a couple weeks.
But then others will replace them.
Well,
So
that's
that-
how-
so
that's
there
how I- will always be vehicles parked out front.
Yeah, but those will be a registered vehicle, though.
Right.
I mean,
Right,
that's,
which is why, that's why I asked how many of them were
Just
registered.
like up on Bennett Drive.
yeah, I mean, that's the registered
All
vehicles.
registered cars out
I
front.
think our concern would be the non-registered vehicles and parked cars. Because
I mean, I'm
you're
not
getting
trying
into
to
being
go crazy,
a
but we'll have to
junkyard.
live there.
I'd like to get back to something that I heard you say a couple minutes ago about that's down back. What's down back?
Down back is where the initial complaint came from. They
But
said
has it been
Those
cleaned up?
photos that actually I took were all towards the back of the property along the tree line. And if you notice, I leaned through the trees to actually be able to get a picture of the material that was there.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't walk by and see it. Whoever walks by and takes pictures has to get in.
you have to get right into the trees.
Well, it just seems that the planning board is being asked to adjudicate this complaint and this notification that there are a lot of junk cars laying around the yard. And I don't believe that's the board's role. The board's role is to issue or not issue the use permit. So we could issue the use permit for the business, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. But you still have to comply with the
That's
rest of the ordinances of the city
That's
that
fine.
say you can't do what you're doing today. You have to fix that and get those visual barriers up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as the snow's gone, I plan on putting a fence all the way around.
Okay. What would be helpful, I think, to the board is to have a site plan, as is required from the permit application, showing, the location of your buildings, your boundary lines,
Yeah.
where your work areas are, where your storage areas are, where your parking areas are, all of that, so that we can see,
That's fine.
exactly what you have in mind there.
Yep.
But
The other part, and this was why I asked what you had for drainage, is that, you're draining to open air, and granted, you say, you don't have any spills, you got methods in order to keep it from happening.
Right.
But in that particular area, you're not serviced by city water, so you have the potential for runoff into somebody else's well. So whatever may leave your drain, there's the potential for that to contaminate somebody's well, regardless of, or even your own, depending on
Drains off on my
location.
property.
Pardon me?
Drains off on my property.
Right, but it's going to get absorbed into the ground
understand
and just
that.
spay through there. So that's my concern, is
Right.
that there's possible contaminants for the well for those surrounding this particular area.
That's why it's important to have that plan
I understand.
to show the location of the building, the location of
Yeah.
your well, the location of your septic and your leach field and all that. We have no way of knowing really what you've got planned without something like that.
If I would have known I needed that, I would have had it all set for you.
I think it says it.
On a use plan, it really doesn't.
No? Okay.
If it were a home occupation, it would.
This is not considered a home occupation? If he's looking for a permit for a business for his house, at his house?
We weren't asked to do a home occupation, we were asked for a change of use. So it's not gonna be, it's kind of like what we did for Darrell Richardson. So he had a use, and now he's doing a retail.
Well, it does ask on this sheet, at least it references the dimensional site plan of your property, showing location of all buildings, parking, and access from the public road.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that is required for something like this.
Oh, there we go.
You know, maybe it is a case-by-case thing, but for this, it's really important to have that. Simple thing to do.
I think we need to wait and see that.
I agree.
As do I.
I agree that a site plan showing the location of the buildings, I mean, it doesn't have to be drawn up by an engineer or architect, but it needs to be relatively accurate to scale. You know, how large the buildings are.
I think I did that when I did the building permit, of where it was and everything, and where the drain was going and all that.
Oh, good.
Okay, well, so you may have something you can work off of.
Right.
Show us where the cars are parked, show us where the fence is gonna go up, where the street is, where the property line of the
I'd
neighbors
like to know where the
is.
property lines are, locations of your well in relation to your shop, and
My well is before under my house.
if you can get ballpark areas of where wells of the surrounding area are as well, given the fact that you just have an open drain running, onto your property afterwards. So
We have a motion to continue this to May.
should we?
You're actually in a public hearing.
We're still in public
Yeah,
hearing.
we're still in
And-
public
and
hearing.
Somebody else wants to speak.
Another gentleman would like to speak, Mr. White.
Do we have anyone else?
Thank you, gentlemen. My name's Gary Netto. I live next door. And I worked 42 years at the bag factory here in Caribou and finally got a chance to retire. And I sit in my back patio. All you see is, what the hell's the word? Not registered vehicles, anyways. He's got a shitload back there. And as Ken took pictures one time, beyond his property line, out behind, he has absolute junk. Old lawn tractors and stuff, and washers, dryers. And as far as his drain you guys are talking about, it is on his property, 5 feet from the property line, which my brother-in-law lives beyond there. His well is 42 feet deep.
42 feet deep? How
Yeah.
far away from the property line?
Roughly 23 feet.
Wow.
My well is 30 feet deep. So they're shallow wells. And you put all these vehicles all over, they're bound to leak oil, whatever. It ain't take much to contaminate the ground.
So is it your contention that the stuff in the back of the property is all still there?
Hell yes. And then, because right now you got probably 6 or 7 vehicles that are buried underneath the snowbank. Plus he's put about another 3 or 4 back there.
We can all take a ride out right now if you want to.
No, we can't.
No washers, dryers, no junk.
Okay. And, oh, hell. He's been working in garage work since he's moved in there. The thing that gets me is, in the summertime, you're trying to sleep, okay? You got your window open. 10, 11 o'clock at night, you hear that damn air compressor going. The air sander or pounding. You can't deny it.
Oh, yes, I can.
We're not gonna get into that tonight, gentlemen, okay?
We're not gonna have an argument.
No, that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Neto.
Anything further to add? Well, then the hearing is closed. The board may discuss.
You want a motion for the site plan with,
We definitely need to have a site plan sketch anyway, an accurate sketch. Doesn't have to be engineered.
do we need a motion for that?
Well, we need a motion
We
to
should have a
continue the
motion,
hearing.
so that way,
To continue the hearing, or to, would we move it pending?
I think we should table it till we have all the proper documentation.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this until we have all the proper documentation and that it meets all required ordinances, as discussed tonight during the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded to table this until we have all the docs,
That would be till next meeting, May,
at a minimum.
At a minimum, yeah.
May 9th.
And by all the docs, we mean the site plan.
Site plan sketch, and I'm not sure what else.
Well,
He needs to make sure it meets the requirements based on our ordinances.
I guess
With regards to like the well, discharge, stuff like that.
I guess I'd like to have current pictures of the back too, I guess.
Yeah, if you could take,
Need some up to date.
if you could
Ken-
bring,
If Ken, maybe you can go out tomorrow and take some pictures?
well, no,
Well, let's know now.
take the pictures just prior to the May 9 meeting and bring them to the city office for the city to print them up so that we have something other than a cell phone to look at them on.
Yeah, I can do that.
Chairman White,
Yes?
I might just add, it would be appropriate when the time comes, that the planning board, you can, in a sense, adjourn the meeting for a field trip and come back and discuss it when that time comes, so that you can actually do a site inspection
Yeah,
as
I'm
part of the
aware of
meeting.
that. I just was not prepared to do that tonight.
Right? So as far as bringing back pictures and things, if you want at the next meeting, you could certainly do that as a board.
Thanks, Jen.
Yep.
Phil, would you entertain us showing up and taking a walk out back ourselves personally?
Yeah, I have a few things that I'm planning on getting rid of anyway when the snow's gone, but
And if we were a day or two before the next hearing?
that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, then we need a vote on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. That's all for that. Now, I guess we need to just do a quick review of the lease document, because that was a condition for approval for the Serenity Beauty Spa and Salon.
Yes, there was a request that we see that lease document on the home permit that we approved for Sonia Godin. And it's in there.
This must be something that happened in my absence.
Yes.
That's me.
Basically leased from her father to her.
Yep.
Sufficient.
Do we need a motion to approve that, or?
No, because it was already
just say that
approved.
we've seen
It was conditional, so that way we've seen it.
We've seen it, all right. I'm good with that.
No vote, that's good.
I don't think we need a vote.
Any objections? Any objections?
No, I think we're all, I think it was,
Yeah, there's consensus.
Consensus.
I try to work this board on consensus whenever we don't need a formal vote. Okay, that brings us to Phil's favorite subject.
well, you're gonna have to specify which one. But I'll take it guilty as charged.
P3. Okay, we've moved on to continue the review of the site design application for Dunkin' Brands and consider a building permit for same.
Okay, so we did receive yesterday, and I forwarded it out as immediately when I received it, the approval from the state of Maine
Yeah,
Department of Transportation. So we have that document that we've been waiting for. We have the original site design review material that we're looking for with all the updated drawings to consider. There were many concessions made for the Department of Transportation, and there were the concerns that we had regarding the traffic flow in and around the restaurant, basically. So they changed the parking configuration and the travel lanes, and they've eliminated the advanced drive-through lane.
So, from a public hearing and/or legality aspect, where are we at? Have we had?
We conducted a public hearing, but we never
Just
completed
one?
the site design review.
We haven't done the site design review.
Oh,
They haven't been here.
okay,
Been not the same thing.
right. I'm just wondering where we are at with the ability to move this forward tonight.
If you would like, and the way I presented it when I forwarded this document out to everybody, is that we can either conduct this as a first read, where you didn't receive it till late, or if you feel it's appropriate, we could act on it tonight. We could actually complete our site design review, and then we could actually move on and consider the building permit as well.
I like
I,
that.
I feel it is appropriate. We've had enough time to mull over most of this, and I know we got the traffic report, but in looking at it, I mean, we've known about it for a while. It's not like it just popped up on us. And we've had time to think about it, talk about it, discuss it in different ways. Then it was pending this information. Now we have the information. I mean, is it going to be perfect? In the sense that, is there going to be some traffic backups? Maybe. But I don't think it's going to be worse than what we see at Tim Hortons right now.
But just because it's not going to be worse than what it's at Tim Hortons, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work. Part of my concern is the interior vehicle circulation, and with regards to, it looks like they now have dumped a possible exit out onto Angle Street.
That's
So-
always been there.
Well, that wasn't necessarily for through traffic. They'd said at the initial meeting that was basically for their delivery traffic.
And dump out. Yeah.
So I don't know if we've done anything with regards to a traffic study for the impact on Angle Street. That's part of my concern, because you're going to have an influx of traffic on that particular area for people who may be leaving and then just dumping out onto Angle. Snow removal is a concern, and given they've changed the lanes and the layout of that, I just don't know if, my concern is emergency vehicle access as well. It's not the fact that I don't want them to come to town, but we can't keep continuing to look at things because of the way other things have been done in the past. We need to make sure that, it suits the needs based on the ordinances and address those concerns. I realize they've made concessions and MDOT has made concessions, but that's just some of the stuff I've noted that I'm concerned with for potential problems. Because peak time, if you have 15 cars in the queue, I don't necessarily know that there's enough room for somebody to get a fire truck in there if there's a fire, or an ambulance. A cruiser probably, but either fire truck or an ambulance, if there's a problem, I see some issues given the width of that particular area and the potential traffic that may be in there at that time.
I don't disagree. It's going to be a busy, congested area. I don't disagree with that. But
It's
I'm not-
very, very, very tight. And I see that they've met their setback requirements with everything, which is perfect. But it's that lot and being so constricted that I see potential errors. I mean, there's problems at Tim Hortons at 2:00 in the afternoon. People are backing into each other. You put a cruiser in there, and then you're going to stove up traffic for however long it takes for somebody to address that particular problem. Let alone if somebody's having, a medical crisis. I mean, that's my largest concern.
But the dump onto Angle Street was a concession to alleviate that kind of congestion that you see at Timmy Hortons. Timmy Hortons didn't have that option.
Right, no,
There
they
was
didn't.
there
I mean, it was approved by
rear
somebody
access.
else. It's just, but having that dump onto Angle, that's fine. If it's been addressed and looked at, that it's not going to dramatically impact and, degrade that street any quicker than normal, I'm fine with that. But part of my concern is the snow removal and the emergency vehicle access. I just see problems if we have a winter like we had this year. As I stated, I think if you looked at McDonald's at any given point, their drive-through was set up so you come down, pull up to the order station, there was like 8 parking spots to the right of the order station, and then their through traffic was to go around there. At one point this winter, there was no way for them to have that through traffic and those 8 parking spots be able to be used because of the amount of snow that was there, and that's on a considerably larger lot size.
But I have to ask the question, is where a commercial enterprise puts its snow our concern? I mean, I get a lot of snow up at the nursing home, and several times a year I have to have Soderberg come out and truck it off because I got no place to put it.
Find me a point on this map where somebody can store a snowstorm that will get a foot dumped onto it, let alone the encroachment that you'll have.
Go back to answer my question. Is it our concern?
Yeah, because it'll impede traffic flow. If
If it impedes traffic flow,
It'll
with
allow
the-
their business and they'll fix it.
If it keeps the customers away, then they're shooting themselves in the foot. It's not our business. It's not our responsibility to take care of their
site
snow.
design review with regards to snow removal as well.
I don't think snow removal is in the
I think
site
there was something
design.
in there.
Because
You have to give me a second
if
to find
snow
it.
removal was a consideration, then half the houses in this town shouldn't have been built. Because they put their snow on the road.
Snow removal was one of the concerns that we brought up with the staff. We asked them, how are you going to address that? And their comment was, we're going to have to haul it off.
And they will.
So which leaves my one biggest contention is emergency vehicle access.
Well,
Well, if an ambulance shows up with its 3 sirens blaring, I have a funny feeling that parking lot will be cleared pretty quickly.
well, plus I think there's even room for it, if you follow the arrows, there's room for an ambulance to get around.
I don't believe that there's enough room. If you
Now,
looked at the line here,
A fire truck,
a fire truck or an ambulance, which are both wider than your normal vehicle, are probably not going to fit within that area there. And if you have cars parked here, that ambulance is going to try to come around here and make that swing.
this is 13 feet.
This is this wide. It's too.
Yeah, from here to here. But what is it from here to here? That's what I'm saying. If you take from the
This is
back
double.
corner of car number 15 and come down to that curb, like I said, I'm all for Dunkin' Donuts being able to expand, but if
Doesn't
there's
sound
just-
like it.
Well, that lot doesn't fit. That's my concern.
That lot is not ideal, but that's not necessarily a reason to deny a business.
Well, and to extend that, based on my previous comment, I don't disagree with your concerns. But given the lot size and given the evolution of the plan, I think they're just about as good as they're going to get on that lot.
Yeah.
They've done everything that
Mhm.
we've asked
You've
them
asked.
to do.
Yeah.
And I can't, and I, when I look at something like this, I look at, well, if there's an issue, I look for possible solutions. Well, what could they do? Maybe. Not that I'm an engineer or
Right.
designer, but, okay, you know, what could they do? I don't think they can do anything to alleviate those issues. This is what they're proposing.
And if I read their traffic permit correctly, are they responsible for the extension of that turning traffic lane?
There were concessions placed upon them, the construction.
That's out on Bennett. They're going to have to.
I mean, they show the turning
Paint-
lane,
paint
they
the
show the
lines.
turning lane, but if I read that permit correctly,
They're responsible.
they're responsible to do that, correct?
That was MDOT's conditions they placed on this approval.
So I guess, are they gonna narrow their frontage that, let's say, is currently there in order to, I guess I'm worried, and I understand MDOT's taking care of that part of it, but that turning lane, are they gonna widen out that section of Bennett basically from North Street down to South Park or just beyond South Park? As far as
believe so.
pushing,
No. They're just gonna have a total of 3 lanes, one of which is a
okay,
turning.
so we're basically gonna lose
The shoulder.
the fog line, left of the fog line, left and right of the fog line. Is that, okay, okay, that's fine.
And that will start all the way at High Street and will go all the way to North Street, considering this plan. In the school project. Excuse me.
Okay.
So what do we need to do to move this forward?
If it's the consensus of the board to have the formal site design review tonight, then we will do it.
Do you need a motion for that?
All right, so I said, if it's the consensus of the board.
What other issues are there for consideration there?
Well,
Is there anything else that we're waiting on, or is there anything
That I'm
else that we
aware
need
of.
to review?
We'll need a representative of the owner to sign this application.
That would be a good start. That's it?
we do not have a copy.
Of the application form? I think it's in.
The application with the checklist
I
in
think-
tonight's packet.
It should be in there.
Maybe it's here.
Yeah, it's in the one with the Plymouth Engineering cover. I
Okay,
believe, Bob.
okay, thank you. Okay. Well, I'm sorry Christine didn't come tonight. She was one of the ones that was real interested in getting this moving. Here we go. We have,
So Ken, you mentioned that well, it is not signed. Is there any reason why we should not proceed having not obtained their signature at this point? Are there any legal issues involved with doing that?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
We couldn't let them have their building permit. We could make them have their building permit conditionally to the signing of everything.
I'll just take one more step back and ask about our emergency vehicle access. It maybe sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but have we checked with Chief Susie or Chief Gahagan to see their thoughts with regards to?
We had our initial peer review, and their concerns were expressed, and we brought those to the project manager at the time, John Winton, that presented to us.
Yep.
And they made concessions. As you see, they changed their travel plan.
But they haven't seen the revised lot layout with regards to, because I know they changed the way from the original way things were parked.
Yeah, I don't believe the chief's seen that.
I would suggest that we can certainly, you can do your review tonight, mention upon just making sure that
Yeah.
those department regulations are met. I don't see that as being something to really hold up.
no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
All right then.
Well, I almost hate to say this, but it kind of bothers me that it's not signed, that their application is not signed. We've been at this for many months now.
Started
They knew we were meeting tonight. I don't understand why they couldn't care enough to sign their application.
I don't think they didn't care. They pulled it down off the internet, and they filled it out as a
Yeah, that's
PDF
just
file
a-
and forwarded it on.
Editorial comment and process.
We can always,
It's not like they're from,
I mean, the guy's been in and out of here for a year.
It's not the same guy anymore though either.
Doesn't matter. We know they have an interest in doing the work.
I just think we need to move it along.
Yes, thank you, Todd. I agree.
I agree.
All right, so then, today's date is 11/2019. And we start on page 5 of this application, or however the pages are numbered in the packet, with our 20-something items.
Yeah.
And the board needs to determine yes, no, or not applicable to each of these. Starting with conformance with the comprehensive plan.
I would say it's a yes.
Yeah.
It's in the commercial area
It's
of
a
town.
commercial use in the commercial zone.
Yes.
And then right off the bat, we get the traffic.
Yeah.
I think we've beat it quite a bit.
Yes.
Sure.
Is site access any different than traffic?
Yes.
How?
Because that's how you access the
How
site.
you get on
You
and
can
off.
access it from Angle Street, you can access it from
So
the
that's a
drive,
The width of your driveway,
right?
how
Yeah.
that's done.
That's a
And
yes.
so we're fine with that?
Yeah.
Pedestrian circulation, well, there are sidewalks in front
The
there.
other one, parking and vehicle
I'm
circulation.
sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That'd be a yes.
Pedestrian
I
circulation,
don't see that as an issue.
they've got a, they've been mandated a sidewalk in the front, I think we're all set.
Yeah. Plus they have sidewalks directly around the building, or at least where they need them for entrances.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just relative to the pedestrian access, I'm looking at the ADA ramp that they're showing on Bennett. I'm pretty sure that doesn't meet ADA, but that's something that we can follow up with at the staff level.
ADA ramp on Bennett.
You're talking about on Bennett,
Yeah.
on the sidewalk, you mean? You're talking at their driveway where there's a curve?
Driveway entrance.
Well, I notice there's no hash marks, and I don't know, or,
You don't have to have hash marks, it's actually in the design of the ramp and the landing areas and the slopes that they have there. We'll have to get a detail on that.
It is, I was gonna say, it looks like the rectangular box continue, would constitute a curving, and then that little brief section above the hash mark area does look like it's probably, doesn't look like it's in line
I
with.
think he's
Yeah,
talking
that
right
diagonal.
Are you talking at the front of the building or on
On Bennett.
Bennett?
Right
Okay.
there, that corner right
Okay.
there. You see how there's a curb cut?
Yep.
The curb stops, that's the ramp.
Okay, I'm tracking you now. Thank
The
you.
one by the building is okay.
Okay.
It's the one by the entrance that we'd have to look at a little bit closer. And again, we can make sure that's done.
Well, then we'll
Okay.
make a note on that
I
one.
was gonna say, so that would go back to pedestrian
ADA
Circulation.
conformance
on the sidewalk.
issues on Bennett.
Site conditions.
Flat land. One tree.
Presume they're going to be, there's adequate drainage for where the rainwater, is that something that's been, what's the phrase? Permeable surface area or adequate, an issue here with runoff, rainwater?
I do believe that's one of the conditions that MDOT put on their approval.
Sheet C3 shows their storm drain system plan. So
Yep.
they have an underground gallery on the south side of the farm.
Yep, and then that's dumping into existing pipe on Bennett.
Okay, so they've addressed the rainwater. I don't know what else would be a consideration for site conditions. I think the site is good.
Okay. Anyone disagree with that?
Nope.
I don't think open space is an issue. I think it's an NA.
Say, does it apply? Sanitary sewage, they're gonna be on the city.
It's gonna be on the city, so it's an NA. Or yes, take your choice.
That would be a yes, that would be a yes, that it's a, and again, for city water,
City water.
emergency vehicle access, which is Phil's concern, so we can,
I would say it's a yes though, because if they met the, we'd have to
Wait,
check.
it needs to be conditional upon approval from both the police and fire chief.
We can do that.
okay. Waste disposal,
Well, they've got a dumpster pad.
that's a yes. Buffering, they're complying with the appropriate setbacks. So they're fine.
Should be a yes.
Natural areas.
NA. I think NA. That, to me, seems, that usually refers to a subdivision development where they're gonna preserve
Some of the trees
open space and all that jazz.
not applicable. Exterior lighting.
They have some on
Yeah, and that was
It was
addressed.
addressed under the NDOT permit as
Yeah,
well.
so that's a yes. Stormwater, that's what we just discussed.
Talked about
there. That's
that.
C3.
That's a yes. Erosion and sediment control, same
Same deal.
same thing. Buildings.
There is one.
Yeah, I think the building's gonna have to, I'm sure their plans that they're submitting are gonna be engineer stamped.
If you'd like to see, we've got a set of plans here.
Existing landscaping, is that a NA? There is,
It's yes, they plan to cut down these trees, and there's that one tree they're gonna keep. The top one, the
Birch
one.
tree.
infrastructure, water, sewer, power, it's all there, yes. Has there been any review of their signage? And they say advertising features,
They haven't requested a sign permit yet.
You'll have to meet the
but
city.
they will have to meet whatever the, so that's a yes. Yep. Yep. Design relationship to site and surrounding properties.
It's a commercial building in a
think it-
commercial area.
Some of it.
I think it's very good. Yes, yes. Scenic,
There might be, if I, again, there might be some additional landscaping we might be able to get on the Angel Street side to maybe buffer that neighborhood a little bit. We'll look at where the light's being placed and maybe work some things out to soften that a little bit there. What they're showing there is some daffodils which grow to 12 inches and the blueberry bushes which maybe get 3 feet, so not a lot of shielding
Right.
to the neighborhood.
There's 3 or 4 residences right there on the back side of that particular lot too.
You want to be careful how they place those plantings, though, to make sure they don't expand out into the street and mess up the sight lines.
Well, they'd have to take care of those like they take care of the snow.
exactly. Scenic vistas,
Enough bitterness.
is that not applicable?
Not applicable. Utilities is okay. I mean, they're.
It's not our concern, right?
I don't think mineral exploration is an issue.
General requirements, page 859.
That's.
I didn't bring, what's page 859 say, Ken?
I don't see it on page 859 in my book, but.
I was gonna say it, since we've redone chapter 13, is 859 still
Probably
859?
not.
Dealing with this one.
It won't be, but we're still using the old one.
Oh,
That's still the
you may wanna make yourself a note that when the new one is adopted, to go back and change that page reference to the new page.
This actually refers to our flood hazard development.
Right.
Which would be incorrect. On the prior page, though, if the page is incorrect, is application for permits.
This thing refers to it as general requirements.
I think that's 13-700.
I thought so too.
The general requirements under 13204 says that you have to get plumbing permits, building permits, certificate of occupancy. Before you occupy any buildings. That's the general requirements.
Well, so that would be a conditional yes then,
Make sure you finish the processes.
because, okay.
We can always make occupancy conditional on meeting the final requirements of Maine DOT. I mean, they're not gonna do the road work until everybody else is on board with the road work, like the school system.
But they're gonna have to put in the turning lane regardless because
Well, whenever they do it, but
but they'll have to do it before they open, because
They'll have to
school's
do
not
it-
gonna open till next year. So part of, they'll need that
Okay.
turning lane prior to, when they're ready to open for business, they need to have that turning lane in place.
Right, but I don't want to make that turning lane a condition of beginning construction. I would much rather make that turning lane a condition of
Well,
occupancy.
that's part of their MDOT permit, so I mean, they have to establish that before I think they'll get the blessing to open anyway, am I correct?
It's on MDOT.
Yeah.
Do we know, now, MDOT's gonna be redoing that section of Bennett Drive?
At some point.
Yeah.
It's part of the school project.
Because if Duncan is ready to open June 1st, when is MDOT gonna do this turning lane?
They need to do it before June 1st. It has to be in place before they can open, because that's one of their conditions of their traffic permit.
That's probably where DOT is gonna look at it and say, what's the timing of the school relative to you opening, knowing that that's coming. It's probably where DOT.
It's their call,
is gonna be a
though,
little
it's
more
not,
flexible, but
yeah,
gonna be up
it's
to
not
DOT.
our call, it's DOT's.
So if Duncan is ready to open and MDOT has decided they're not gonna do the road for a couple more months,
To the school.
That's DOT's call.
But am I
it
correct?
doesn't prohibit them from opening them.
I can, correct? If MDOT says, no, you need to have that turning lane in place before you can start business,
If they say that.
Right.
Well, they're the ones that are gonna come and apply the striping.
right?
Okay.
A phone call to DOT, when the time comes, we'll probably cover it.
Well, that question was, I posed that question to the person I've been talking at MDOT. He's like, they're gonna extend the travel lane, past up to North Street. I said, okay. I says, but the school's not gonna open till 2020. Duncan wants to open 2019. And he's like, that's a very good question. So he's like, that would have to be in place prior to the school being open. They would have to have that particular lane there for the turning traffic.
So, yeah, I think we leave that in DOT's hands if they want to leave it in use or not.
I'm writing down the conditions, and I'll review them before we take a vote. And remind me if I miss one.
The phosphorus export, is that enough?
Yeah, it's an NA. The three conditions I have listed are ADA conformity on Bennett Drive.
Sidewalk.
Bennett
Yeah,
Drive
drive sidewalk.
sidewalk. Emergency vehicle access, emergency vehicle access approved by PDFD. And signage conforming to city ordinances.
Or were we gonna say something with regards to the buildup on the backside to Angle Street as well? I thought we were gonna put a condition in there for that.
You mean buffering?
Buffering, yeah.
Trees or something?
Yeah, okay.
Site buffering. Visual buffering, I guess
So
is
that
the
would be
better
the
word.
east side? Is
That's
that
correct.
On the east side. And I'll
Just
put
say, I would just say adjacent to
Angle Street.
Angle Street,
I'll
yeah.
put Angle Street as part of it. Okay, so that's fair enough. That makes 4. Does anyone have anything to add?
Can I talk about traffic again?
If you want to go outside and talk to the traffic outside, sure.
I'm gonna be you. They got room for you downstairs.
On
so it's okay.
on that contingency for emergency vehicles, what exactly is involved there in terms of approval? You used the word approval.
Oh, well, they're going to review it, and they're either going to say they like it or they don't.
Okay, so what if they don't like it?
Then we're back to square one.
Then it
Then
stops
we'll have-
everything.
then we have
Everything
to find
stops.
a means to make it work.
Until they say they like it. All we need from them is a note saying we've looked at the plan.
So the correct word is review. Review and approval?
Yeah, but I think we need approval from both the chief of police and chief of fire department that they're okay with the emergency vehicle access in and out of that place.
And approval.
Well, that's tacit, but yeah, there's no reason for not putting in the words.
Okay.
And
So are they going to be on record that they've looked at it and approved it?
And typically they send a letter on letterhead, right?
they'll send a memo. They'll send a memo, become part of the file.
Perfect. That's all I needed to know.
Anyone else with concerns? All right, then I'm going to put it to a vote. The vote is to approve with conditions, and we just discussed what they are. Who's making a motion? Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Oh, there's one more. Were we going to add their signature as a thing, or is that just as a condition or not?
Personally, I think that's a nit.
I don't care. Yeah, we talked about it earlier. I just wanted to bring it up to make sure.
Yeah, I know. What we should
Okay.
do is be better about reminding people to sign their applications.
Yeah.
I
We
agree.
need to make sure, I guess, that we have complete
The
applications.
fact that they have been here several times shows an indication of a desire
There's some intent.
to enter into this.
Business community.
I've heard they get the bulldozer warming up right now.
Yeah, I imagine they
I
do.
wouldn't be surprised.
Well, they wanted to be started by now, didn't
What
they?
do you want to call this?
Make a motion to accept the building permit application.
Oh, the site design
Site
review.
design review, pending the
Conditions of approval.
conditions of approval.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded to approve with conditions. All in favor?
Oh, wow.
Motion carries unanimously. I will start the signature. You want me to sign this one, or you want an original?
Thank you, Phil.
I've got the original sheet right here.
We have my conditions on there, that's all I can ask for. But about traffic,
You could add snow removal.
yeah, that's already been addressed. It's gonna go with the blueberry
That's their
bushes.
problem. Soderbergh would love to do business with them. Okay, do I need to write the conditions again, or you
have to
Why don't you
Take
just
them off
take
of
his
here.
copy?
Yeah, I would like to have his copies for the notes, and we'll make sure that everything's
Oh,
on the original.
They'll get on.
okay.
They'll get on. I have to print neatly here.
That's exciting.
It is.
It's just because your wife's gonna be happy.
What's Iris got to do with this?
She likes Dunkin' Donuts better, but she only goes to
Oh.
Ford's because they have a drive-through.
I hate drive-throughs. I will not use it anyway.
I don't either. I refuse.
I will say, I went into Dunkin' one morning here, and they have the mobile app, and the mobile app was down, and the harsh reality of people having to interact with people in order to gain whatever goods they wanted that particular day was pretty amazing. At some of the lack of ability.
Why don't we have this much fun, council?
You guys aren't loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
It's,
We also have to
straight
do
to the
this
point.
tonight.
well, you
This is
need
their
to bring a
building
couple of
permit.
fills on.
He does
I
the
know.
building
You
permit.
had-
Provide some entertainment.
Well, they had one, but he decided he was all done. See, and I can't
That's
run.
up to the
So.
code enforcement officer.
Oh, because you're an employee.
Right.
I looked for a loophole.
Yeah,
I got
I'll
one.
with
I've been
you.
trying to.
Yeah.
There's my notes on that. And you'll need to.
Well, it got pretty lively 2 meetings ago.
Well,
but
I'm
then
going to
it
give you a
quickly
couple more
squashed.
pages.
Tell Mark to lose the necktie.
Listen, you guys are wonderful things, so is the sport chapter, so is the
I've already given it
Well,
some
if you're
check
trying
off.
to loosen it up.
Is that everyone?
I do think that's and council level.
And I would like to thank the board for all the work that's been done on this over the past few months.
Okay.
It's over, it's done.
Hey, we only get one of these every 5 years. We ought to be happy.
Yeah, compared to one planning board I was on, we have it pretty easy. Was granted it was a growing city, well, it's still a town, but it's twice as big as Caribou.
So we on to item 5A, or 6A, excuse me. Staff report.
It depends if you want to.
Oh, that, wait a minute.
Building permit discussion.
That's
I don't
New
think we need to-
communications.
I don't think we need to
That's-
consider the building permit.
6. Yeah, that's what I said, after I corrected myself. Oh.
You corrected yourself?
I did. Oh, all by myself too.
So Ken, what was the,
Oh,
this is
you don't
included
want
in
to
the
consider
package?
the building permit?
Well, we don't
No.
approve or disapprove building permits, you do.
Oh, that's a good point.
We didn't want to steal any of your thunder, Ken.
Well, if it's wishes of the board, I'll go ahead and sign the building permit.
Please do.
Please do.
Yes.
Sounds like a consensus.
Awesome.
I mean, the fact
Is
that it's
but
unanimous
is the
vote,
building permit going to be signed based on the conditions of?
You can't do
I
that.
think they go hand in hand.
Please, Phil.
You can't do that. Okay, now we are really on item 6. Shoreline zoning update. What do you have to tell us there?
The shoreline zoning update is that when we did a review of Chapter 13, as we prepared it to send it to council, we realized our shoreline zoning map and ordinance is woefully out of date. And it's the type of thing that we can't just sit down around the table and correct, because it has to be accepted by the Department of Environmental Protection. So I reached out to the Department of Environmental Protection, and I started the process. Basically, on the next, I have to reach out to IF&W and get all the information that they wish to have on their map, and then that's the update.
So that's going to hold up the approval of Chapter 13 that we.
Well, we actually discussed that we were sending it forward knowing that we were going to work on the
Okay.
shoreline zoning.
The council knows that.
Okay, I just.
Right.
That's an open
I know
item.
we stated that, but I wasn't sure if that was going to impact them.
So-
The one caveat we noticed since then is that since we were looking at our floodplain ordinance, and that was accepted by the council this past Monday, we realized that the new shoreline zoning map will actually include those 100-year floodplains as part of our resource protected area. So we already know the map's going to change.
It's okay.
But it's only the 100-year flood zones, not the,
Sorry, Tom.
so it's just those areas that are considered A and
Fish
not
from your
B.
porch.
So think of those areas along the Arisk River, along the Little Madawaska River,
Yeah.
the Caribou Stream. So
So-
that's my update on shoreline.
Okay, so that's good. And then we have 20 pages of comprehensive plan update. I do not propose to review 20 pages of checklist.
Is, I thought
So the comprehensive plan update. What we've done is really we tried to make a Gantt chart and figure out, okay, how are we going to fit all these? A lot of different material to think about. So this is my attempt to do kind of a spreadsheet on how to approach this. What we've done already is we've engaged Northern Maine Development Commission to help us with our transportation and our demographics, which they have money to help us with. We don't have to pay them for that. The other one that is all in purple is archaeology. Was archaeology and what?
Historic and archaeological resources.
Right, which won't change, so we probably won't have to go into that. But if you notice, we're already behind the 8 ball. It's 4 months in, so we're looking at engaging some public forums, and we've already targeted a few economic development, maybe the age-friendly group, and people like that. So we start gaining our public input.
what's the year of the last one? Was it 2010? No, it was after that.
It was 14.
14.
So this is the 5th year.
So this is the
Contract
5-year
update.
review?
It's an update, it's not a complete
Okay.
plan.
Okay. I didn't think it made very long since we last did it.
Doesn't seem like long, does it?
5 years.
So I guess I just wanted to kind of take the temperature of the planning board to see where you'd like to be involved, somewhere in this Gantt chart. I think that, if we start thinking about policies and ordinances, we've already mentioned a few that we're concerned about and that will need work.
The public hearings that were held last time, we're trying to remember if Kathy Mazzucchelli was
She did.
She was the facilitator.
she was the
They
facilitator.
weren't hearings, they were discussions.
Right, whatever. Do we have a volunteer to lead
To
the?
facilitate?
Yes.
Are you?
Not
No,
yet.
I'm just asking. No, I'm not.
It takes a special kind of person to do that.
Yeah, she, you know, I don't know how
I
you
saw a
follow
volunteer
Kathy's
raise
act.
his
She
finger in
has-
the back row.
Kathy has a way of energizing the crowd, so.
You have a nervous tick tonight, Tom?
No, I just,
You're afraid I was volunteering.
I thought you
He's trying to
volunteered.
volunteer you.
I thought you volunteered yourself. I saw you go like this.
I think between Ken and I, we can handle most of that.
Good.
I guess I'm volunteering.
By proxy.
Just like in the army.
What a guy.
You could, lighten up the crowd by the two of you, shooting some hoops just prior to the meeting start. Play horse or something.
Actually, we did
We did
charades
tennis
last time
before,
out,
yeah.
but I'm not good at that, so.
All right, anyway, I'm glad to know this is an update, not a complete rewrite of the plan.
Yeah.
So the update is basically.
And you really don't, I mean, this isn't a test, you don't have to give me answers tonight, but it's
Something
just
for
that
us to
we
look
need to
at.
get started, so I wanted to bring it forward.
Okay.
It's like homework.
Work.
Do we have? Oh, well, I have a copy home.
Maybe we'll push this along a little bit more,
Okay.
if I might.
Sure.
So, one thing to look at is there are many sections in there. And I would propose that each of you take one or two of those sections and review them and bring back some suggested changes that you would like to make. And then as we go out and we have some of these public meetings, we'll definitely get the public input, but you probably already know some things that maybe would need to be updated or changed a little bit based on our current situation. And then that would, I think, speed up the revision process. Do you know if we have this electronically?
Yes.
We do? So we can send it to you electronically if you want to say, I'll take
It's,
5 and 20 or whatever.
I don't think it's that long of a document.
No, it's not.
Is it 30 pages or maybe 50 at max?
No, it is quite big. It's
It
quite
was like
big.
giving birth the last time.
Yeah, but the point I'm getting at is I don't know if,
If you'd like, I could run to get one, it's right on top of my
Sure.
file.
it's,
Right here.
Yeah, it's,
yeah, there it is, right there. We got
It's
one.
about 100 pages,
100 pages.
double-sided.
Well, that would mean 50 sheets of paper.
100 pages.
But
Read it the same way I read the
I guess what I'm getting at is I don't see why we can't all read the whole thing. Because, it's kind of hard to
And make margin notes.
anticipate what particular area might be of more interest to me. There may be snippets in multiple areas.
And if it's anything like chapter 13, we're going to find inconsistencies.
Oh, and it's
throughout.
It's
Oh, no,
easier to
this
read
is
the
a
chapter.
it's a
That's
whole
just-
lot.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, this is a perfect plan. There's no inconsistencies in this one.
I think what you'll find is that the goals and the policies that the plan asserts, maybe we need to revisit those a little bit. Or maybe there's some new goals that we want to try to achieve. And that's, I think, where we need to start, is looking at those. And when we go to the public with this, usually what we do is just, you can lay out the plan, say, this is the top priorities that are in the plan now. Are these still our top priorities? And you
Yeah.
get the public input to what do they really want to see changed.
Handsome guy right here.
Oh, I
Well,
don't care.
I noted that the last two sections are existing and future land use. That's something that's really right in our wheelhouse here.
And I think you're right. That actually is the biggest crux of a general plan.
Those
is
were the two that I was looking at as well.
And in fact, one of the things I've been talking with Ken about, and this is probably another place where that you could step in and help, is we need to get a better idea of what are the current land uses on each property so that we can map those and we can actually illustrate for people, these are, this is where all the multifamily homes are, and we can illustrate that, and we can start to illustrate how the zoning is consistent or not consistent with uses, and the desired development in certain areas is, again, consistent or not consistent with current uses. And that being the case, how do we modify the policies or the goals of the plan to either mesh or change what we are seeing?
Does the city have resources to do that kind of GIS analysis?
Yes,
We do.
yes.
Ooh, I want to see that.
But it takes getting the on-the-ground data
Oh, it's
into
the data,
that.
of course, yeah.
Right.
The data.
Would it, does mapping the vacant lots served by city water and sewer that are vacant, does that have any purpose in a plan like this?
Certainly, as we look at you could have a
Future
map of
development.
existing uses, and you could have a listing of potential lots for redevelopment and future desired land uses. Yeah.
I think if you had a map of,
We
Ken's got one.
did an analysis of some data that was sent to us by CUD. So basically, houses
Yeah.
that are vacant, that are hooked up to sewer and water.
well, I'm not talking necessarily vacant houses, I'm talking about vacant lots.
Yeah.
You know, how many vacant lots sit in town with water and sewer right in front of them, and, a developer might be looking for places to build houses or apartments or something, and if we can entice him, go where the water and sewer already is, it's less costly for the developer, and it's more revenue for the utilities.
And we can look at blight and see if we could take care of some blight and open up these areas to new development, high-density development for affordable housing.
Some cities have even gone to the extent of not only do you look at the property and say, is that residential? Yes. They would also have a list of 5 questions of what's the condition of the roof, what's the condition of the yard, and you do create a quality of use on the property for the GIS analysis, so that you can go through and you could have a score that, okay, in this neighborhood, those homes, yes, they're residential, but the overall score is a 5 out of 25. That begins to also help us steer the direction of, okay, how do we want to modify our goals or our policies in this neighborhood? And one of the things I've worked on is in the last community and where I grew up was they had specific neighborhood plans. You had, for instance, you could take Caribou and say everything north of the new bypass, that's one neighborhood. Well, what do those residents want to see for that area? And you have neighborhood meetings specific with that group. Maybe you have one specific with everybody that's east of the Aroostook River. That's another neighborhood. What do you want to see here? Are there any changes? And then maybe you break the downtown area up into 3 or 4 neighborhoods and have neighborhood meetings and say, how would you, for your area, what are your desires for the future uses for parks and different things? We can make this, of course, as grandiose as we want to, or we can make it a text change exercise.
One of the goals that we discussed in one of our earlier meetings was to examine, again, maybe riverfront development kind of zones. And I think that the potential there is huge.
And that was discussed during the comprehensive plan.
It was,
Those
Yeah.
meetings.
yeah, Tony Mizuko was
He's big on that.
very big. So there's all
So
kinds
follow
of
through with
untapped.
that, I think that would be,
Really re-energize that if we
Yeah.
can.
I mean, that section between Fort Street and the intersection of Main Street, where it intersects with Caribou Inn, I mean, there's all kinds of frontage. But, I mean, part of that, I think part of what the hiccup was initially was the railroad track that runs between there. But I believe they still have ownership of, so, the easements as far as getting in and out of there as well.
But beyond there, beyond the beyond the boat landing, Caribou Stream and beyond, the state owns what used to be the railroad track.
Right.
And I think they could be big partners in helping us redevelop that
Yep.
area.
The thing that keeps coming up in my mind when everybody talks about, oh, that's not railroad anymore, is I personally think we have to keep in mind what might happen out at LDA. They
Rocket ships.
keep talking about developing businesses that would require rail service.
You're going to have to rebuild the rail between Caribou to Loring.
That's what I'm thinking.
I
And
know,
if you-
but-
If you do that, if.
In order to facilitate that, you'd have to rebuild all the way down through, because that's why they don't come to Caribou
I
anymore.
know, it'd have to go all the way, at least all the way to Prescott.
And that's, if I might, that's something that we need to look at in the general plan, is not what's the general plan for Caribou, but as we expand and we look at everything around us.
Well,
how
what
does
I'm
our
saying is if
system
we,
do
if
those things?
we get really cool and we go off and develop a waterfront park or some such thing down in that area, which right now the state owns, what's gonna happen if somebody has a burning need for rail access? Is they gonna come back in and put a railroad right through
Well,
it?
I think the question to ask Carl Flora is if they wanted to renew rail line to Loring, is the existing right-of-way where they would want it to be, or would they want it somewhere else? Because they would have to rebuild.
The infrastructure starting at
From
Loring
scratch.
South is gonna need to be reworked completely.
I mean,
Yeah, I know, and that may be what's keeping things from happening.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
instead of going from, I mean, I'm sure there's rail into Easton because of McCain's and those guys. I don't know why you don't go up one, I don't know why you wouldn't go up 1A
It's all the way to Fort.
to Fort Fairfield to Limestone, and not go via Caribou if you're going to Loring.
Right. I don't know.
Gotta have a place for the hobos.
It's probably quicker to go right to the St. Lawrence Seaway and do it by ship, save you a lot of money in building tracks. But anyway.
Okay, we digress, sorry.
Back to the, I believe when we did the plan last time, the city housing people chimed in, because I know that there's an issue with lack of Section 8 housing, and I think that's going to become more of an issue as our population gets older. People looking to get rid of the lawn mowing and driveway cleaning chores and looking to have a nice affordable apartment, and I don't know what could be done to, and I don't know if a contractor can build today and rent for what Section 8 allows and make the two numbers come together, or if it's just prohibitive, then there's no way a new construction could ever be rented out of Section 8.
Yeah, I mean, to address that, in order to make that affordable, you have to do multi-unit, and it has to be a lot of multi-units to take advantage of the efficiencies and the economics of it. And so then it really gets down to how do we maximize existing housing stock and make that work? Is there a way of refurbishing that or remodeling that to make more opportunities for affordable housing? But yeah, a great concern, a great issue that we can
I was
tackle.
speaking to an elderly lady today, I won't guess her age, who was telling me that she needs to find another apartment, and she just can't. There's nothing that she can afford.
Right.
And I believe the housing employees of the city have said there's a tremendous need.
Yeah. So in Caribou, you have to engage those companies that are doing that kind of housing, because the city of Caribou doesn't own any house.
Right.
We're just do Section 8 vouchers. So communities like Fort Fairfield and Presque Isle, and well, quite a few communities actually, will actually enter into these agreements with USDA and build, these large housing.
Fort Fairfield did that, yeah.
But that means you own the real estate.
You're on the hook.
So Caribou many years ago decided pretty much to let private interest take these over, and it's worked well over time. We're definitely not at saturation because there's a need there, and there's a need not only for independent living. There's also a need for, and you know this, for assisted healthcare. So
Yeah.
housing's huge.
That should be a big part of the plan,
Well,
future housing.
is it too much to ask the members to
Read the whole thing.
take a look through this thing over the next month and come back next month with sections that they'd like to spend more time concentrating on?
I'm fine with that.
As am I.
I think Denise should send a reminder email. Well, you said you have an electronic copy. Forward an electronic copy to everybody, and that'll jar as the reminder. And anybody who wants a printed copy, if you don't want to waste your ink, she can do some
Yeah,
hunting.
well, I'm lucky, I've still got mine. But you, if you'd like a hard copy.
I
Denise can
definitely would
probably-
like a hard copy as
Yeah.
well as a soft copy. Hard copy is good to read and make notes. Soft copy is really good for automated searches and trying to find what you're looking for. So.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
It was a good basketball game, wasn't it?
We're still talking about it.
I
Did go for a long time as well.
Your wife and I had a conversation about it just the other day.
Oh, yeah,
She was here for Connie's thing.
right.
Okay. Fill us up there.
Okay, well, we shouldn't have the manager step down, because we're gonna talk a little bit about chapter 13, that we were set to send to
Yeah.
council. And really, and I mentioned peer review earlier, and it's important to get other eyes on these things. When Dennis was preparing this document to send it to council, he noticed that there were some glaring issues with it. And so we're gonna conduct another peer review, make sure we get eyes on this thing, and I'll let Dennis comment to that.
Well, and I guess just a couple of things to note. As I got into the changes, I didn't see that there were enough changes to consider it a rewrite or a complete readoption of the code. And so as I got into the writing of the ordinance itself, only those sections that were changed were being referenced. And so in that sense, the whole rest of the shoreline zoning and everything else was still on the table for your review as you saw fit. But there were one of them that caught my eye pretty quickly was that in the establishment of a mixed-use zone, the lot requirements or dimensional requirements said that you have to have at least an acre of land to be in the mixed-use zone. It was probably very early on in the process that was discussed, and then we went through the process of changing the zoning map and changing where the mixed-use zone was going to be, which results in the mixed-use zone covering a large portion of inner or downtown areas where the lots are not 1 acre in size.
But they are served by water and sewer, and I think that's where we're gonna draw the distinction.
And so some of those things need to be clarified
Yeah.
in there.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, we dropped the ball on that.
Why would we have to set a minimum size anyway?
So that's a great question. In a mixed-use zone, you wouldn't have to, so long as the development complies with your parking requirements, your setbacks. You don't have to have a minimum
Yeah, I
lot size
take
in a
that-
zone.
I take that definition out completely.
Isn't there a minimum lot size somewhere for
Yes, there is a
lots
minimum.
not served by water and sewer?
Yes, there is you have conforming lots and non-conforming lots, but in a mix, that will come into play in and of its own. If it's, and what's a conforming lot today may be different in 10 years,
So what you're getting into is the realm of what's called form-based codes, where you simply say, if it can be parked, if it is landscaped, if the lighting's addressed, and it looks a certain way, we don't care beyond that. Some cities are even to the point of we don't care what you do inside of that building as long as it, again, meets those criterias. They take the land use tables almost entirely out of their codes. I'm not advocating for that, but that's kind of what you're getting toward is there some things that are more important to us in the mixed-use zone than other things? Do we really care what size of lot so long as certain other things are in place? And the question really is, are those other elements, the parking standards, the landscaping, whatever you want them to comply with, are those where you want them to be? And if they are, then yes, you could certainly raise the roof on lot size dimensions. But if those things are not where you want them to be, then a lot restriction kind of helps you in the review process.
Oh, we gotta go back and look.
It really comes down to how flexible you want to be with that mixed-use zone.
Well, seeing as we're looking for more development,
As much as possible.
then we want as much flexibility as possible. We don't want to be tying our own hands.
So
Yeah, I think the economy will drive some of it. No,
Yeah.
If you've got an eighth of an acre parcel, there's a lot of potential uses that just won't fit there.
Right.
And so nobody will be trying to cram a 10-pound business into a 5-pound bag.
Unless it's a Dunkin' Donuts.
Unless it's a.
Don't get started.
I wasn't gonna go there. I wasn't gonna go there.
That's perfect.
I was gonna use it as a prime example, but I
Second
wasn't
one
gonna
for
go
that
there.
high love, and he just spiked it.
I couldn't pass it up.
So at this point, I haven't had all the time that I wanted you to go through your recommendation. I have been going through it just this week and making several recommendations that should be incorporated, in my opinion, and be able to bring those back to you another
We
time.
welcome and highly value
Absolutely.
your suggestions.
Some of it's just a reorganization. I was just looking at one chapter tonight that dealing with lots, and it says that it's dimensional requirements, but it also has within the regulations things pertaining to height restrictions on the buildings, setbacks, and dimension requirements, and access requirements all in one section that it doesn't match the title. And so there's some things like that we need to, I think, break out and clarify, make it easier for the citizens to read in the development community to be able to pick up on.
You're the professional in this area. We welcome you to go to town with your pen.
Well, I think a lot of this happens when you rewrite a document so many times.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And that's what happened. That's where we've been.
Yes.
Different leaders
for 30
leading
years.
the way, and it hasn't been all.
Oh, yeah,
Really gelled,
it morphed over time, for sure, as it was developed.
And I guess I would also add that the city council, in their last meeting, they set their main priorities for the different departments in the city. And the zoning regulations, and seeing those rewritten was pretty high on their priority list. And so we'll spend a little more time, I'll spend a little more time focusing on that so we can get that taken care of.
Appreciate that. Definitely.
We need the help.
So chapter 3 is coming back. Just when you thought you were out of it, they pull you back.
That's
No,
okay.
because
We still made some
we're getting
progress.
closer to 2024, so.
I get another shot at changing all the incidents of inshore to ensure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, let's not even go down that road, because then we have to worry about affect and effect.
We better worry about affect and effect.
There are legal implications.
I know there are. And people call me grammar police, and they don't realize that it's important.
So any more about chapter 13?
Yeah.
Okay. We're at the kind of a weird time of the year where we're dealing with not only melting snow and garbage popping up everywhere, but we're dealing with snow weight on people's roofs. So we've had a rash of building collapses. We've had a rash of complaints, so now we've got a rash of notices of violation that people have garbage all over their lawn and need to straighten out.
Well, that happens every spring. People should be a little patient.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I stopped for a moment because it snowed again. So I'd really like to go out and snap a picture and say, this is the problem, rather than just send a blind notice of violation. I had a chance, an opportunity to participate in the county emergency management incident exercise a couple weeks ago. Being a little self-service, I got my hands on their state-of-the-art GIS equipment and their nice big large format plotter and scanner. So I was able really to participate in the event, which was really neat. They got right down into the weeds of people calling in for emergencies all over. People not being able to leave their houses because they were flooded in, and calls coming in from all corners. And I spent really about 3 hours populating their GIS system with data because it was a blank slate. So everything from roads to surface water to boat launches to cell phone towers, anything I could reach out and grab, I grabbed it and put it in there. I realized that maybe the best thing in that application was not a full-blown GIS, but maybe a Google earth situation where you can rapidly bring in the data, share it out immediately, even over a cell phone. So it was interesting, and I thought it was a very valuable exercise. I look forward to doing that again. We've had an issue with our local food pantry, and this also goes to code enforcement because the building they were in was severely distressed with the melting snow. They didn't have a leak. They had water pouring in through the ceilings, ceiling tiles collapsing. And when I went to check it out, actually the manager went over to see what help we could lend them. We found out the dire conditions of the building, and by the time I got there and checked that the Caribou Utilities District had actually shut the water off for non-payment. So we stickered the building. No one can inhabit that building until they straighten out these problems.
Is that the building that was leaking?
Yes.
You guys had to do that too? The one that's down there where
on Herschel Street.
On Herschel Street, the one that Louis Green girl.
Yep.
You had to shut off the water.
No, we didn't have to shut off the water.
CUD had to shut off the water.
The water was shut
For
off
non-payment?
for non-payment. So
It wasn't the water, the pipes that was leaking into the building. It was the
roof.
It was the
However,
roof.
the part that they can't inhabit it without facilities. Close to close. So anyways, it left the pantry without a home. And so we've been trying, the initial idea was to put them in 60 Access Highway, the old Mecon building. We looked at it, they actually went in and cleaned up the whole reception area where the offices were, and then realized that there was no toilet facilities there as well because of a freeze up that happened years ago. So we've been working on the finer points of not only reestablishing facilities, working on the finer points of coming up with a lease for this entity to live there at 60 Access Highway, but also realizing there's a change of use and we have to go through the fire marshal and all that entails. And that's a 6 or 8 week, it's a process. So it's not going to be a real quick process. The council has given us go ahead to work with them, and we're doing the best we can with that right now. That covered 1, 2, 3, boom. Something that came across our desk this morning was a small community grant. You might have seen it on the news last night that the county was going to do this program. Basically, it's to repair malfunctioning septic systems in the rural area, so not where public utilities are available. It turns out that it was not the county applying for this grant. This money's available statewide. And first thing this morning, 8 o'clock, we had people at the door asking questions about how they could get involved with this. And the short answer is the municipality would have to apply on their behalf for them to participate in this grant program. And so we're trying to figure out the finer points of that. That's happening even as we speak. We were able to pull down the guidelines. We talked to the people at DEP. Our building inspectors are both at a workshop downstate. I want to bring them in on this. We're going to get the word out through Denise and Christine to get it out there on the website. So this morning I got immediately one good application. So there are qualifications they have to meet. Financial, I think cap is $40,000 and it's incremental. So at $40,000 you get a 25% split on the project.
Is that a $40,000 value or income?
Income. I misspoke that, income. And also if they have a very, very low income, the project could be 100% from the state. But I think for the most part, there was, like I said, the ceiling was 40,000, and at that rate, it would have been a 25%, 75% owner, 25% state, and it fluctuates. So we'll keep you updated on that program and see if we can attract some people and figure out how we're gonna apply on their behalf. The caveat there is the first deadline, it's a two-step process. The first deadline is next Friday. So we're behind the 8 ball. We're gonna get the word out if we're gonna have any participants at all. LED streetlights, it's starting to get exciting now. We're getting to the point where we've done our inventories. Not only has Real Term done their inventory, we've done our inventory. We've had EBR do an inventory. We've combined all that information together, and there are just a few dangling lights out there that we got to discuss who owns what.
That's gonna include ones that were previously shut off as well, correct?
Yes.
And what about, not that is there any possibility of additions for areas where there never has been a light that maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea?
We've identified locations for new lights, and they've given us quotes for those as well.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's the two sample ones right down here in the corner, correct?
Right next to the library. Right. So there was a lot of concern from the public safety about the rural parts of the town, and can we get lights on the intersections? And so we've identified most of those. There's even places in town where it looks like we could maybe eliminate a couple lights and move one light down to an intersection and get better visibility as far as the public safety routing of things. So we are looking at all of those.
So that's all I had for updates.
Is that all?
It's been a slow week.
So tell me about then, training for the planning board by JCAM, is that, May 9th is our next meeting, right?
May 9th, yep.
So how much time in that meeting has been allocated for JCAM?
It depends on what you would like.
Well, what else do we have going for that meeting?
I would expect that we've got,
Well, there's potential
we've
for.
tabled something for the 9th already.
Yeah. Yeah, and we just said we would discuss the comprehensive plan, potentially.
Oh, I don't think we're gonna have a long discussion on the 9th. On the 9th, we're gonna, each of us, maybe posit what pieces we'd like to tackle.
It might be an advantage to have Jay Cam in the room and have that discussion at the same time.
Sure.
He's got lots of experience with comprehensive plans. So for some of you, it's probably a review, but I think it's a good exercise to go through for getting good habits in a planning board. So.
Is that the same training I went down to in Lucerne and down below her?
I don't know if Jay uses the same format, but I suspect it would include the same material.
Yeah, I know, you're traveling, that's
That
what
was for elected officials?
Yeah, and then that was when I was
I knew that by
It'll be video.
It's good training either way.
He didn't mention my name, did he?
Yeah, he said, because Dan's gonna be traveling.
So that's all I had, unless you have some other goals that you want to talk about.
You had sent out something with regards from my request at the last meeting for home occupation.
Yes.
Maybe if we have time, maybe just put that on there as a possible item to just review and look at and just kick around maybe for the next meeting. Okay. So,
I do plan on having a proposed home occupation revision in my part of the codes.
So why don't we wait until,
that's fine. I'm good with that.
okay, let's,
Good?
yeah, let's wait for the city manager's recommendations first.
yes, by all means.
May I raise a concern or a question? Yes? Oh, okay.
I was gonna start
So
teasing
the
you. Go ahead.
the two or three meetings that I've attended since I've joined the board, we've had requests coming in, permits coming in that were in an incomplete state. And I was just wondering, is there something that we can do to our process to ensure that we're not addressing incomplete applications when they come in? Can there be a screening
Part of
prior?
that's my own education.
Prior to reaching the board, it should be reviewed and made sure that it's complete before it reaches the board. We should not be wasting our time on things that haven't even been completed. That's my view anyway. Are there any other thoughts there?
No, I agree.
I totally agree, and I think we've
Absolutely.
addressed that on a couple occasions with regards to applications being incomplete.
Yeah. Well, every one that I've looked at since I joined the board has been incomplete. So maybe that's a trend. Maybe that's just
No, as I said,
being
that's probably
unlucky.
part of my education as well.
Okay.
So
You
veterinary
you
review
wouldn't
would
mind
be-
doing that then?
Nope, not-
That would be
not at
awesome.
all.
If you'd like.
And I think that'll make things go a lot quicker too.
Yep.
'Cause then we'll have everything and it'll be,
You guys end up meeting
yeah,
with
you meet your requirements. People will go away happy.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, when you look at the revisions of our processes, when you say only bring it to you if it meets all the requirements, I guess I propose if it meets all the requirements, why does it have to come to the planning board? And at that point, you've identified that these are the codes you want it to meet, and if it meets all of those codes, can it just be handled administratively?
Talking
Our
about
issue
the
is-
requirements of the submission, the requirement, the permit.
It comes in without a site
applications.
plan, or it comes in without a
Cer-
deed, or
certainly.
A lot of things that
That's
comes
the
in
kind
out
of
I
of.
mean,
things we talk.
I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but the one for Sonia that we looked at in, what's this, one we looked at in February, for Sonia's, hers was incomplete, didn't have, we asked for the lease aspect of it and all that other stuff, and had to have her come back, and I know she was probably upset and frustrated that that was the case, but, the application clearly states you've got to have X, Y, Z things
Yeah, but
taken
on that,
care
I
of.
mean, she should have been here. Somebody.
Well,
should
and that's
have been
just
here.
it.
That's.
I totally agree.
Yeah, along those lines too. I'm uneasy with considering applications when there's no one from the applicant side to talk to the issue. We did it with Duncan because we've met with them so many times and we know who they are. But if someone wants us to consider a new use or whatever, or a new business or what, they ought to be here to advocate for it.
I agree. But should it be mandatory? It's good practice, but
Well, one way to train the public is to table it
yeah,
for
that's
a
true.
month if no one is here to speak to it.
If there's a lack of information that cannot be provided by anybody but the applicant, and they're not there to answer the question, then that's perfectly reasonable grounds to say we can't make a decision.
I think,
So they do it. They don't show up at their own risk. Make that at their own risk.
I think part of that is what's communicated to them at the time they come in to get the blank application, et cetera. There ought to be a checklist that tells them, you have to provide these items. It is highly recommended you be there, or I don't know if it's recommended or mandated that you be there,
Or have a personal representative there.
et cetera.
I've never said it's mandated, but I always encourage people to come and talk about their project.
Well,
It just makes sense.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that I would make it mandatory. I don't think we need to do that. But
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
but I think a lot of people have not gone through these processes before, and they're coming in, they rely on city staff to guide them through it.
Of course,
Very good. That's all I had.
only after they were approved.
Anyone else have anything?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Done. Good luck to you, Evan, this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Lots of spaghetti.
Yes.